Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Bihari Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtadhara Shatashi Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th Canto. The Science of God, Chapter 5, Prahlad, the saintly son of Hiranyakashipu, text 52. Dharmam, artam, cha, kamam, cha, nitaram, chanupurvashaha, parada, yochatu, rajan, prashityavanyataya cha dharmam artam cha kamam cha nitaram chanupurvashaha parada yochatu prashityavanyataya cha dharmam artam cha kamam cha nitaram chanupurvashaha paradayo chaturajan prashitavannataya cha dharmam artam cha kamam cha nitaram chanupurvashaha Pradaya Chaturajan Prashritavan Nataya Cha Okay. Dharma, mundane occupational duty. Artam, economic development. Cha, and kamam, sense gratification. Cha, and nitaram, always. Cha, and anupurvashaha, according to order, or from the beginning to the end. Paradaya, unto Prahlad Maharaj. Uchutuhu, they spoke. Rajan, O king. Prashrita, who was humble. Avanataya, and submissive. Cha, also. Translation, commentary by His Divine Grace, HG Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Thereafter, Shanda and Umarka systematically and unceasingly taught Prahlad Maharaj, who was very submissive and humble, about mundane religion, economic development, and sense gratification. Purport. There are 4 processes for human society: dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, and they culminate in liberation. Human society must follow a process of religion to advance. And on the basis of religion, one should try to develop his economic condition so that he can fulfill his needs for sense gratification according to the religious rules and regulations. Then liberation from material bondage will be easier to attain. This is the Vedic process. When one is above the stages of dharma, artha, kama, and moksha, one becomes a devotee. He is then on the platform from which he is guaranteed not to fall again into material existence. Yad gadva na navartante. As advised in Bhagavad Gita, if one transcends these 4 processes and is actually liberated, one engages in devotional service. Then he is guaranteed not to fall to material existence again. Om Ganitavrandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshulan Militamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karitavachalam Pangamanga Tegirim Yakripatamaham Vande Shri Gurundin Taranam Vancha Kapadri Vishcha Kipasani Bevacha Patitanam Pavane Byo Vaishnave Byo Namo Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasa Hari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, translation again. Thereafter, Shanda and Umarka systematically and unceasingly taught Prahlad Maharaj, who was very submissive and humble, about mundane religion, economic development, and sense gratification. So Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, these are the, you could say, different goals of human life. Animals don't have such goals of dharma or religiosity or economic development, or I guess they have the sense gratification one. Some primitive form of sense gratification. And then moksha, they don't have, these in advanced forms as the humans do. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he came to give us the ultimate goal, or you could say the process to achieve the ultimate goal, Krishna Prem, or love for Krishna. That's the ultimate goal above all of these. So when one first comes to Krishna consciousness, or when one, we could say, begins the process of Krishna consciousness, there has to be some, you could say, like rewiring. In other words, we have to change how we think. Because naturally, we all think, and we're conditioned to think in certain ways. So the way a devotee thinks versus the way a non-devotee thinks is quite different. So to become a devotee means to, you could say, recondition or retrain or rewire our thinking, right? Because thinking, feeling, willing, I mean, they all go together. What we think and what we feel and what we do, it's all connected. So for example, like Prabhupada would give the example that someone may see a beautiful flower and they think, all right, I'll take this flower and I will give it to my girlfriend. And what does a devotee think? Oh, I will take this flower and I will offer to Krishna and then I'll give it to my wife. No, Prabhupada didn't say that, but he said, I'll take the flower, I'll offer to Krishna. But then you could offer the flower to your wife, that's fine, if you have a wife. You can't offer it to your girlfriend, though. So it's a way of thinking. It's a different way of thinking. So, or a man, heterosexual man. I mean, the man sees a woman and thinks, okay, well, maybe I could try to have some, I don't know, some romantic relation with her. Relationship. But a devotee will think, okay, let me give her a book. I mean, and then she becomes a devotee and then I'll marry her. Actually, it's happened. There's been devotees, there's this one devotee, Nityananda Prabhu. He was in Dallas Temple. Now he's in New York. Anyways, he was out distributing books, and he distributed a book to one girl. And then, she came to the temple, and she became a devotee, and then he married her. Same with similar experience with Markandeya. Those of you know Markandeya. There was a girl, whatever her name was, but she became Lalita, and then he married her. So, anyways. So yeah, there's a whole different way of thinking, and feeling, and different way of acting as a devotee, and that requires, okay, one thing is that, okay, we're trying to retrain our mind, and Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, right? What does he say? Sanskrit about the controlling the mind. Mostly when Krishna talks about the mind, what does he talk about? Yeah. Huh? About, I know somebody knows a shloka about the how the mind is like the wind, or how it's difficult to control. There's so many shlokas like that. Anyways, how the mind, uncontrolled mind, unbridled mind, that is cause for bondage, and a controlled mind is cause of liberation, right? So a devotee has a controlled mind, a non-devotee has an uncontrolled mind. So we could say, like Prabhupada said, there's the liberated souls, there's the conditioned souls, and there's those who are trying to be liberated. So you could say, okay, well, I don't have a controlled mind, I'm trying to control my mind, right? But then Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that or Arjuna says that to control the mind is more difficult than to control the wind. That's very difficult, right? You could say practically impossible. But then what does Krishna say? It is possible by practice. So when the mind wanders, we practice. What is that practice? We bring it back to Krishna. Sometimes the mind wanders and then the living entity follows. And then they could be gone for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and then they come back. But we don't want to do that. But we want to bring the mind back. That's the process of Krishna consciousness, to bring the mind back, to practice this. So there's so many principles within the Srimad Bhagavatam, within the other Vedic literatures, and these principles are meant to educate us in terms of what to do and what not to do. But it's not just, you could say, attending classes and hearing lectures or reading even, but there has to be a transformation of consciousness. We have to change the way we think. Of course, classes help that. Reading helps that. These things help that. But of course, the main way in which our consciousness is changed is by engaging in the different processes of devotional service, as outlined by Prahlad Maharaj. We just went through 20-page purport. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padas, the different processes of devotional service. Because just attending class, reading, there needs to be more purification to actually understand the topics. Like why can't people understand Krishna consciousness? Because there's a lot of ignorance covering them. Or why can't people understand the importance of Krishna consciousness? Because there's a lot of ignorance covering them. They just can't. They can't process it. So it needs to be uncovered. And as one person said, that if an ape, like they compare books to a mirror. So if an ape looks into a mirror, you cannot expect a prophet to look out. In other words, a book's like a mirror, and I'm an ape. True. So if I look into this mirror, you can't expect a prophet to look out. In other words, if someone is really covered by ignorance, what can they understand? So they need to become purified. And what does that mean? It means that one has to not just, you could say, skim along the surface of Krishna consciousness, because there could be a lot of skimming. Like you have like these, you got these guys out on the boats here on the bay, and they got their different, I don't know, skim board, but I'm thinking about the thing that's attached to the boat. Yeah, water ski. they're on the board or whatever, and they're like skimming the surface. They're not going into the bay and seeing what's down there with their what do you call those? Snorkels and the snorkel and this and that. It's been a while since I engaged in water sports. So. But in Krishna consciousness, if one just skims the surface, then they're really missing. They're going to miss the point, because it's not a surface process. It's not a just skimming the surface process. I mean, you can, but we're cheating ourselves. Just like people, they come to the temple, right? And I mean, it's nice people come. We want people to come, and we're happy. We want as many people to come as possible. But there's different questions that they could ask the devotees. Like, for example, hey, what's that? What's this mean? Okay, it's a relevant question. What's on your forehead? Okay, fine. You have no idea what's on his forehead. You ask, okay, fine. Why do you wear that color cloth? Okay, it's a relevant question. Like, yeah, why not purple? Why not pink? Yeah. Why not whatever? So you could say it's a relevant question. But just to stop there, it's like, I mean, it's very just surface level. I mean, your haircut, your clothes, there's a lot more to, the philosophy and the whole. There's a lot more questions to ask. So when in the Vedas it says atato brahma jigyasa, now it's time to inquire into the absolute truth, it's not saying it's time to inquire into surface level things. Not time to skim the surface. You're a human being, now skim the surface. No, it's saying you're a human being now ask very important questions, deep questions. Try to understand how, as one devotee said, try to understand how what I'm saying is right. Or makes sense, not how it doesn't make sense. Try to understand. And this is the problem with dharma. This is the problem with, you could say, religiosity. You have all of these people skimming the surface. And then that could turn into all types of unfortunate situations. Like, for example, you just skim the surface and you never attain the goal. That's a problem. Because what's the whole point? The point is to attain the goal, not to skim the surface. And that's the problem with religiosity. Hindus, Christians, Muslims, skimming the surface. And then they skim the surface, more or less. They say, hey, sometimes I go. Sometimes I dive deep. Mostly I'm skimming, but more so they're skimming, and then people wonder, man, does this process even work? What's the use? These guys don't look like they're really, like they're really attained anything worthwhile. So that's one problem. That's called people, you could say, not being the best representatives of a particular religion. And also it could turn into hypocrisy, that I'm skimming the surface and therefore I'm not really relishing the higher taste, and then I have to engage in all the other types of things. So you have dharma. These are some problems with dharma. And, okay, artha, right, economic development, kama, sense gratification, moksha. Now you could say the whole problem with a lot of these is that they're, you'd say, like, I-centered. Okay, I want moksha, or I want sense gratification, or I want economic development, or I want to skim the surface in religion, right? Be seen as a good person, whatever. So it's you could say egocentric. That's a problem. But the devotee says, no, I do not want dharma. I do not want material religiosity. I do not want economic development. I mean, I understand people, They need to make money, they need to spend money, they need to pay the bills. It means they don't want to unnecessarily engage in economic development. They don't want to unnecessarily engage in sense gratification. There has to be some sense gratification, or the body just stops existing. They don't want to unnecessarily engage in sense gratification, and they don't want this, they're not after moksha or liberation, but what they're after is Krishna prem. They're after love for Krishna. And there's and without, you could say, diving deep into the process, sometimes people, they develop a bit of a hatred towards it, or they are, yeah, I mean, it happens. I know it sounds bizarre, but they're like, hey, how could you hate Krishna consciousness? Well, there's this one, I mean, you have the materialists, they just hate it already. But then if devotees don't practice it properly, they may end up hating it. For example, there's this one poem. I'm not going to tell you who it's from. You're supposed to give credit, but I'm not going to do it this time. No, maybe I will later, but who knows. So I'll read it to you. It says, I went to the garden of love and saw what I have never seen. A chapel has been built in the midst where I used to play in the green. So I went to this garden of love, right? And I didn't see what I've seen before. And what was that? That a chapel was built there. In other words, where I used to enjoy, where I used to have a good time, a church was built there. Okay. And on this chapel was, on the door, there was written, thou shalt not. You know, because thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that, right? So many, you guys are just taking out the fun of everything, right? Like, someone was giving class the other day, talking about different principles, and like, well, what do you do? I mean, like, how do you enjoy, right? So on the church was written, thou shalt not, on the door. So I turned to the garden of love and saw and how there used to be flowers there growing. And instead of flowers, I saw that it was filled with, oh man, I can't, someone have a phone? I can't read my writing, sorry. I need if you look up Garden of Love. Sorry. I thought, when I was writing, I thought I could have read it, but... Okay, sure. You got it? Okay, great. There it is. All right, here we go. Just take two. I went to the garden of love, and I saw what I have never seen. A chapel was built in the midst, where I used to play on the green. And the gates of this chapel were shut, and thou shalt not writ over the door. So I turned to the garden of love that so many sweet flowers bore. And I saw it was filled with graves and tombstones where flowers should be. So he said, I went to this, okay. And priests in black gowns were chanting their rounds. No, it doesn't say that. And priests in black gowns were walking their rounds. Might as well have been chanting, they're probably praying. That's what priests do. And binding with briars. So briars is like this, for those, and it's maybe an uncommon word, but it's like thorns. And binding with briars my joys and desires. So in other words, what he's saying is that this is what religion is. It just takes all the joy and all out of the joy and out of my life. And it replaces it with this dark, chapel, thou shalt not. There used to be flowers there, but now there's tombs. And then you have these, men in their black gowns walking, thou shalt not, thou shalt. That's what he's saying. So that, of course, we don't accept that. That the real joy in life, the real happiness in life, is Krishna consciousness. And if someone's thinking like this, it means that they're ignorant, or they just have no experience of the higher reality. But again, skimming the surface and going after these 4 human lives, then 4 goals of human life, one may develop this to different degrees. A bit of a bitterness, which is not a spiritual emotion. So does anybody have any questions or comments? Yes. It's 8:20.
Hare Krishna. I have a question about skimming the surface, and I wonder if it would be possible, and I'm interested in your thoughts about this, if it's possible for someone to be skimming the surface and not realizing it. And so I'm thinking about maybe, for example, if someone comes maybe they come for Sunday and they're in the kirtan or any, kirtan somewhere, whatever, and they're like really excited about it and jumping up and down and happy and loving it, because kirtan's very ecstatic and fun and wonderful, but that's all they do, and then they go home and they go stop by Dave's Hot Chicken, so if they could be doing that and thinking that, oh yeah, I'm getting involved in Krishna consciousness, but they're actually just skimming the surface, not following any of the regulative principles. Is it possible do you think it's possible for someone to be in that situation and so they are skimming the surface, but they don't realize it?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And how would someone in that situation, what do you think would open their eyes? How would you know if you were in that situation?
Om Jnanativadandasya, right? Gyananjana Shalakaya, Chakshulan Militamyana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, that the sadhus, the holy persons, or sadhvis, as Kapila Dev mentions his mother being a sadhvi, holy man or holy woman. mean, saintly devotees, they open one's eyes. They open the eyes of others. It means they remove the ignorance. And how did they do that? Through their words. So by associating with devotees, by closely associating with devotees and hearing their words, hearing their instructions in class or outside of class, informally or formally, whatever, conversing with them, then those words, they wake the person up. And also by seeing their example, say, oh, wow, this person's really, seems like they're really experiencing something, some real happiness in Krishna consciousness. I want to experience that. Like devotees would see Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was feeling so much ecstasy, dancing and chanting and reading, and he was feeling so much ecstasy and speaking with others, and he was clearly a happy camper. Right? He was clearly a happy person, to say the least. Blissful. So one is that devotees saw that in him. So they said, I want to be like that. And then two, Prabhupada's words were just, waking people up. So that's the process, that devotee association, which is the most important, and which really brings the other process, which really brings the whole process of devotional service. It really brings the different processes of devotional service alive. I don't know if that, anyways, you understand what I'm trying to say, but like, for example, chanting Hare Krishna. You may chant Hare Krishna with somebody who's a non-devotee or with somebody who's a Mayavadi, but to chant in the association with real serious devotees, it's a whole other experience. Same with the Bhagavatam. You may hear Bhagavatam from a non-devotee or a Mayavadi or something, but if we hear Bhagavatam in association with devotees, it's much more, there's a whole other experience. So yeah, it is possible that people could be skimming the surface and not realizing it, but practically the way in which they're able to realize is by associating with devotees. Does anybody have any other? Yes.
So I have an example of skimming the surface of myself. When I first got to the temple in Denver, I received the Bhagavad Gita, and I was struggling to read it. It's very in-depth and complex in the way it was written. It didn't grasp my attention. So one of the things I did was, instead of reading the purports, I read the words between Krishna and Arjuna straight through. And I read it in like 45 minutes, an hour, something like that. But the in-depth aspect of it, I didn't understand because I didn't know who Prabhupada was. I didn't know, the philosophy behind it. So like, in a sense, I was skimming the surface of trying to see the message without hearing it from somebody that knows the message, or that was instructed the message.
Yeah, one devotee, one Prabhupada disciple, he told me that for many years, he could never really enter the Bhagavad Gita, like the message of the Bhagavad Gita. And he said he actually had a bit of a kind of aversion to it. He had aversion, he liked other books, but Bhagavad Gita was kind of, but then at one point he just said, you know what, this has to stop it. This has to stop. And he just really forced himself to try to understand the Bhagavad Gita, to read it, to listen to it, to really try to understand. And now he loves the Bhagavad Gita. He really gets a lot out of it. And then someone would say, well, this is unnatural. You're like forcing yourself to read something and try to, but the thing is, that's what does it mean to practice? It means you may not feel like it. Like if you want to learn an instrument, you have to practice if you really want to learn well. An hour every day. And it doesn't sound good, and you may not feel much attraction to it, but over time. So yeah, that's also part of Krishna consciousness, to, you could say, force oneself to try to. Any other?
Hare Krishna.
We have a few more here, but then once that's complete, then we could call on you.
Of course, I can wait, Prabhu, no problem.
I was wondering if you could just talk about the aspect of, like, I guess not like sincerely chanting, and then you ended up like being hating kind of devotional service almost, or like the heart. I read the other day, it's like when the heart doesn't melt when you hear Krishna's names because like your offenses. So
you want me to comment on that more? Well, can you rephrase the question?
It's just like if you're not like sincerely chanting, and then like what are the effects of that actually like?
Oh, well, yeah. The effects are, says that, for example, it says that the holy name is like a touchstone, chintamani. Means whatever you desire, you get from Krishna, right? Prabhupada says in the Sri Upanishad that Krishna is the self-sufficient philosopher fulfilling everyone's desires since time immemorial. So, if we have to be careful what we're desiring because we're dealing with Krishna, and he may, you could say, fulfill his desires. Yeah. those material desires, which is not, again, it's not the goal of life. It's not the ultimate goal of life. Some of the material desires, but chanting it attentively, it could it causes many, bad results. Like, for example, an offense to the holy name is to consider the glories of the holy name to be an exaggeration. That's an offense. Now, if one doesn't chant attentively, means one doesn't have to be perfect, but if one doesn't try to really chant and really call out and try to control the mind and so on, then over time one may think, hey, okay, my guru's saying, okay, Bhagavatam's saying, okay, so many books are saying, but I don't know, I've been chanting for quite a while and I'm not experiencing any of that, those good results. And then we might think it's an exaggeration. It happens. And then we join the 11 tribes or 12 tribes, or how many tribes are up there? Yeah. We join which, okay, fine. People have different paths. People have different, But I'm just saying, especially if one becomes initiated and they're chanting and they think, oh, this is all just an exaggeration. 11 tribes or 12 tribes, it's a place it's a Christian group up north. We've had people come to that point. I remember years ago I was in a play. I was in 2 plays in Krishna consciousness, believe it or not. And I didn't like it, but I'm not much of an actor, So I was once Lakshman. This was when I first joined. But in that play, and I was once Balaram and Janmashtami here. But that was under Giraj Gopal's, Hare Krishna Giraj Gopal. He might be listening. That was under Giraj Gopal's, pressing me, inspiration or whatever. So, but I won't do it again. Unless he comes back, we could have another play. So, anyways, but in that play, when I first joined, there was one person. He was Ramchandra, and his girlfriend was Sita. And yes, and it was at the park. We had a play at the park here. It was part of the Ram Vijay, the burning of Ravana. So anyways, but yeah, they're interested. They were chanting, they had mridangas and they had devotional clothing, all different types of things like that. And then one day, we walk out into the lobby and there's a mridanga there and then there's other things. I'm forgetting, it was a while ago. There's pictures of Krishna and books. And then there's a note there that says that in essence, we've given up Krishna consciousness, and Bhakti Bronson, he could have the mridanga, and that was it. In other words, they didn't have much faith in Krishna consciousness, or they thought it was just an exaggeration. Just like these mundane academic people, they think all of religion's just a big, like a myth. Myth means it's just made up. Somebody wrote it, right? And they say, oh, the Hindus, they just have better authors. They wrote a better story, a little more logical, or that's what some of them say. So one could come to that if they're not chanting attentively. Also, one could come to the point of, just like we read this poem from William Blake, one could come to the point of thinking, oh yeah, it's just, one can never really become free from material desires, or at least we could say for the most part become free from material desires. And this is a bit of, I'm torturing myself here. So those are some of the results. One could think it's exaggeration. One can think that it's just a process which I'm torturing myself unnecessarily, and it's not possible. That's another thing that could happen. There's other things also. Does anybody have any other in the temple room here? All right. B. Joy, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Balaram Prabhu, thank you very much. You're most kind. Dandavat pranams. Prabhu, I may be wrong, but it seems to me, because of the purport you presented, you offered to us today, that there are two types of moksha. The material moksha, which comes after dharma, artha, and kama, and the spiritual moksha being mentioned at the very end of the purport, which is the devotional moksha. So why, my question is, based on this, my question is, why is it that one is material and the other is spiritual?
Would you like to answer that, Javita Prabhu?
Well, famously, at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, second verse, we find Dharma Projatakaitavotra. Here in the Bhagavatam, all cheating dharmas, religions are kicked out. And Prabhupada says, and it's there in the commentary of Sridhar Swami, that includes mukti, which is simply focused on one's own liberation from birth, old age, disease, and death. But spiritual mukti is clearly a byproduct of the process of devotional service. That we find that famous verse by Bilba Mangal Thakur, which I won't chant, but he says, "My dear Lord, if I'm established in pure devotion to you, then I'll get the fruit. Mukti? No, I'll get a darshan of your beautiful Kashur form." And as far as mukti goes, she's staying at the door waiting to serve me. So material liberation. Prabhupada, I read, I forget where I read this. Is that even just putting a coat on is in the species of wanting liberation. It's cold out. Okay, I want to be liberated from the cold, so I'll put a coat on. I put the cold. I'll put a coat on. So that culminates that mood, which is definitely obviously self-centered, is about false ego, culminates in getting free entirely from birth, old age, disease, and death. I want to be liberated. Prahlad, in his prayers, we're going to read in a month or two when we get to his prayers, maybe a few weeks. Near the end of his prayers, he has this famous one, Prayena Deva Munayo Swa Vimukti Kama. It says everything right there. For the next line said, for the most part, those who are munis, they wander alone in the forest, not desiring to help anybody else. That's in the verse. Rather, they simply have lust for their own liberation. In other words, it's completely self-centered. It's totally material. But for devotees, when you're advancing, you actually, it's an evolution of your desire, so that you begin, and we're all encouraged, yes, don't forget birth, old age, disease, and death. Don't you want to be liberated? How many times did Prabhupada, use that as in preaching? But as you progress in devotional service and you're tasting more and more bliss by bhakti, then mukti isn't even part of your aspiration. But it comes naturally. And there's that famous line in the second canon, Mukti Hitvanyata Rupan Swarupena Vivastati. Mukti is not defined as liberation from birth, old age, and disease and death. It's defined as being reinstated in your original Swarup. Hitvanyata Swarupena Vivastati. And so and so there's nothing wrong with being liberated in that case. But Lord Chaitanya teaches right there in Nadanang Sundari, motivated devotional service to you. So that's the idea that for devotees, pure devotees, mukti is very insignificant. Kaivalyam, in fact, pure, just liberation, and not without bhakti is like going to hell, right? What's the phrase beginning of the verse? Kaivalyam nanakayate. So that's the basic difference between impersonal liberation and bhakti liberation.
Are you satisfied?
Oh, completely. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
All right, great. You got a satisfied devotee. Okay, Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.